Good evening, everyone. Welcome to June's speaker series. It's so great seeing everyone this evening. For those who have not attended in the past, the Deergo Lab Speaker Series is a monthly event where founders and leaders share advice on how they overcame challenges, capitalize on their target market, and develop their products, providing you with actionable insight for your own products and processes. For more information, you can find us on Facebook or online at deergolabs.org under our Speaker Series tab. I'd like to thank our sponsors for this evening's conversation. This free event is presented by Deergo Labs and is sponsored by CGI, Valley Beverage, Thomas College's Harold Alfond Institute for Business Innovation, and Bricks Co-working and Innovation Space. In addition, this conversation is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. This evening's conversation is presented by Central Maine Growth Council in conjunction with the Maine Department of Economic and Community Development. In this speaker series, Gabe and I will be discussing how businesses in Kennebec and Somerset counties impacted by COVID-19 are eligible for funding and technical assistance through the Economic Recovery Implementation Hub program. And with that, I will turn the camera and race over to the other side. There we go. Yeah. Right. So to begin this evening, we're going to start with a brief program overview, and that will discuss the 4 scopes of services that are covered under the Economic Recovery Implementation Hub program. Then we'll get into a little bit of the grants with Gabe. We'll go over the program guidance, the application, and answer any questions that you have in the end regarding anything we covered. So just to introduce our team that's involved with the project, we're very fortunate to have an incredible team that takes a lot of time to go through these projects and make sure that we're providing the best assistance that we possibly can to each individual that comes into our pipeline. And so to begin, we have Garvin, who's the Director of Innovation, Planning and Economic Development. We have Gabe, who's the Assistant Director of Economic Development and Strategic Projects. There's me, I'm the Development Coordinator. And in terms of this project, a lot of coordination will be handled by Gabe and myself with the grants and the intake portion of the actual program. And then Susan and Emily with Deergo Labs are responsible for the entrepreneurial training and, of course, championing our accelerator program. So to begin with the program overview, there are 4 scopes of services that we cover under the Economic Recovery Implementation Hub. Technical assistance is general assistance to entrepreneurs and businesses who are either looking to grow and expand in the current area that they are, or if they'd like to relocate to Kennebec or Somerset County. This is specifically for entrepreneurs that have started their businesses on or after January 1, 2020. And it is not industry specific, so we do provide assistance to those that come to us and are interested in learning about the economic development services that they can leverage through our organization, or if they're not within one of our counties, we can always refer to one of our partner hubs throughout the state. When it comes to technical assistance diversity, this is specifically covering technical assistance within that same tranche of services, but for those that are in racial, ethnic, or linguistic minorities, or those that are in underrepresented communities. So when you're looking on the intake form, or you're going through what type of assistance can my business receive, there are specific sections that you can check off that denotes if your business is one of those specific tranches and how we can best serve you in that way. With new business grants, we have approximately $700,000 in funding that is available to entrepreneurs that are eligible within that stage. And if they're in Kennebec or Somerset County, there is no match required on that funding, and the grants are currently rolling, and applications will be accepted on a rolling basis until the funding is no longer available. And then when it comes to entrepreneurial training, we support startups and entrepreneurs through our accelerator program, but also through any type of entrepreneurial assistance that we can provide with our partners, such as the Small Business Development Center, Thomas College's Harold Alfond Institute for Business Innovation, or even Kennebec College, and one of our newest partners, Oakland College, with a Howard Lab for Entrepreneurship. And now I'm going to turn it over to my friend.
Thank you. Thank you, Sabrina, for teeing that up for me. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you to folks online. If at any point you have questions, stop me, raise your hand, whatever. We want to make sure this is as engaging as possible. As Sabrina suggested, we are going to focus this evening on one of the aspects of the program, probably the most exciting to most people, which is the grant aspect. To best align with the natural life cycle of your business, we have broken this funding up into 4 different categories. We have, starting out, and I'll walk you through these, our small business growth grants. These are up to $5,000, and these are to do some early stage, whether it's legal fees, prototyping, maybe some research and development. Then we have our Spark Enterprise grants, which are up to $10,000. And those are for maybe businesses that are a little more established and are looking to scale or enter a new market, or they have some larger overhead or hiring that they need to be doing. We have also set aside a pot of funding for innovation grants, and these are for businesses that are trying to do something novel or innovative, and that maybe have some element of technology associated. Maybe they're a little more decentralized. Maybe they're trying to enter into a newer market. And that pot of funding is bracketed between $25,000 and $50,000. And then finally, we have the largest pot of funding, which is our special project grants. And these funds are for businesses or entrepreneurs that are looking to engage in a much larger project, trying to really scale quickly, meet some new demand. Maybe they have a new contract they need to scale up for. There's some new equipment that needs to be purchased, or a combination of some of those other things I mentioned. And it's important to note that this is not by any means a hard, set parameters that you need to abide by. There's certainly flow in between any and all of these categories. We just wanted to make sure we put some examples up to try to put this amount of funding in perspective for everybody. The eligible activities that we can use these funds for are pretty wide and varied. As Sabrina said, this is not regulated by any particular industry. You can use the funding for equipment needs. It can be used to scale. If you establish yourself as a business, but you experienced some hardship in the last few years due to the pandemic, and you have a contract, you're going to enter into a new marketplace. Maybe you need to use it for some scaling. Expansion or relocation, the funds can be used to cover lease agreements, overhead, location into Waterville or into our region. Research and development, if this is one of the innovation grants, you need to go through the FDA licensing process. There's a lot of R&D dollars involved. Maybe you need the funds for that. Or hiring of new staff or retaining existing staff. Hiring is a challenge in our marketplace right now. Everybody's struggling with that. These funds can help them. And also this is not set in stone. If you have questions or you have a funding use that you want to find out if it's allowable, reach out, let us know. We can either help you work through that, or we can get concurrence from our partners at the state who have been extremely helpful so far and very easy to work with. Some of the guidelines and eligibility. So now we're going to start getting into kind of the meat and potatoes, how we're going to flow through the grant application process. Few kind of big hoops that we have to jump through because these are federally designated dollars. There are requirements, there are relief funds, so there's restrictions that have been put in place. The business needs to have started operating or engaging in business on or after January 1st of 2020. That's a set date that we can't really work too much around. The second piece of that requirement is proof of impact due to COVID-19. This can be loss of revenue, this can be slowing of sales, it can be hardship hiring, logistics and supply chain issues. There's a number of different ways that you can articulate or portray hardship due to COVID, and we're happy to help you work through that and figure out what makes the most sense for your application. Business must be registered with the Maine Secretary of State. You need to be registered to do business in Maine to be able to use these funds. And then also you must have a significant presence in Maine with at least 50% or more of your employees based here. And this fund is part of, we are one hub of many across the state, and we'll talk about that a little more later. But for our funding usage, we need to ensure that users are located in the Somerset and Kennebec County region. Okay, now required materials that need to be included in your grant application are budget form, completed W-9, and we're going to go through all this stuff is available, and we're happy to help folks go through it. Some of that documentation to support your claim of impact due to COVID, it could be tax documents, income statements, profit and loss statements. Those documents can be, we can look at all of it, we can look at just one, whatever makes the most sense. And your most recent financial statements. And then encouraged documentation. This is the kind of stuff that we don't need to see for your application. It's not required, but if we see it and you don't get any extra scoring or any extra points for giving us more letters and more documents. However, if it does help us better understand the intention of your organization, of your business, and the kind of change you're trying to make in your community through your expanded services or your new project, then we'd love to see those documents and that information. Timelines are always helpful for us. This is a project that has a 2-year performance period. We have these funds for 2 years, so we'd like to have a general idea of what your timeline is for your project. This is what that budget form is going to look like. It's fairly straightforward, but I'll walk through it a little bit. Does this have a laser pointer on it?
It does. I don't know if it works on the TV, but.
Okay. Well, I was excited for a second. You just need to see your entity name, the pool of funding that you're going to be requesting your grant from, the total amount you're asking for, and then a brief and kind of not super formal breakdown of what tasks or what items that funding is going to pay for. If it's just, I'm asking for $10,000 to pay for a piece of equipment, then you can just put down, whatever the equipment is, 10K, and then the total cost is 10K, and that's all you need to put in. If it's a little more of a comprehensive project, you're asking for more funding, we can break those out into different categories. What's written in red there is just an example. Anybody have any questions before I keep trucking along? This is the scoring criteria that we use for each and every grant, regardless of scope, scale, amount of funding, or whatever tranche it's coming from. We use the same criteria. First, we want to look at the potential economic impact that it will have in the region. This is a project that we will be operating throughout Kennebec and Somerset County. So if you can show an impact or a service is being provided or it's bettering the community on a wide and deep basis, then you probably score higher there. Negative impacts experienced due to the pandemic. Again, this is a federal requirement that we need to be able to control these funds. So that's something that we need to have scored. The quality of your proposal or your plan, and make sure that it's in line with the program guidelines. Sabrina is going to walk us through those guidelines in a little bit. And if there's ever any questions or concerns about it when you're filling out your application, we're happy to help you work through it. We're going to score on the number of jobs and the quality of jobs that are supported by these funds. We're also going to score on financial feasibility. Is this possible? Is this an action? Is this a realistic budget that we're seeing? And then the long-term viability. Is this a project that you're going to be employing and then in a year needing more funding? Or is this something that we can be a catalyst on to create a program that can be evergreen and continue providing support to the region? And there's always some amount of reporting. We've worked really hard to make it as painless as we can. The reporting on this program will only occur every 6 months after the initial award is processed. If your project only takes 3 months, then we're only going to see a final report from you. If it is 2 years, then we're going to see a few more. But the reports are going to include relevant growth metrics, any sort of increased revenue we've experienced due to the funding that we awarded, any new jobs that are created. We want to see some updated budget tables and any sort of narrative, economic narrative that you can provide us that helps us kind of understand and better tell your story and be champions of whatever your project was. And there will also be a final closeout meeting with us when your project is completed. This is your checklist. This is also, everything you're seeing here is also available in our program guidelines. The first thing that you're going to want to do if you're interested in funding is complete the application and the questionnaire. It's easily available on our website. We've made it as straightforward as we can. If there is any questions, we can work with you on it. But that just is all digital. It's all online. If you have everything in front of you, it should be a pretty smooth process. We need those documents that we said are required, the W-9, your financial documents. Documents that show that the entity was established on or after January 1 and 2020. Your budget template and sign and dated agreement to comply with the reporting process, which is all online. It's all easily available. Now we're going to do some guess and check. We're going to see how well everybody was listening. We're going to work through a few case models, and you guys are going to tell me if this project is awardable, if they meet the eligibility requirements. Our first one here is Jane and John's Noodle Bar, a well-loved family establishment in beautiful Somerset County. They're requesting $35,000 for new equipment that would allow them to create more jobs, serve more guests at the restaurant. They've shown us in their application that there was a demonstrated impact due to COVID. They've had a loss in revenue and customers over the last 2-3 years. Their application was complete. We saw everything we needed to see. Is this grant awardable?
How long have they been in Somerset County?
Let me see. They've been serving Somerset County for the community for 20 years. They're well loved, well established in the community. Can they be awarded? No, they can't, because they were not established on or after January 1 of 2020. Good job. Case model 2, yeah. Applause for everybody. That's great. Number 2, we have a startup composites manufacturing facility named Composites R Us. And they have supplying industrial manufacturers and doing research and development on some novel composites for the marketplace. They're requesting $50,000. That funding is going to be used to build and fit up a new operation strategically located near a logistics hub near the Portland Jetport. It's going to create new jobs, part-time positions. We've seen their impact due to COVID, their impact due to the supply chain, delays in shipping, cost increases in raw materials. Is this grant awardable? No, because it's not in our region. It's not awardable by us. However, because there are other hubs with this pool of funding around the state, we can refer them to one of our partners that is also working with the state of Maine, and they are certainly likely to be eligible for funding through that organization's program. Garvin, you have a question?
Do we like referrals, and what is the nature of that referral process?
We love referrals. We love getting them, and we love receiving them, and we love giving them. The referral process when we have an organization that comes through our intake form or submits an application and they meet all of our eligibility requirements, they just aren't in our area, then we're going to work with one of our connected hubs in another part of the state. And we're going to pass that referral along warmly with all of the data we have, and we'll arrange a meeting so that we can make sure the ownership or leadership at the organization that's applying and whoever the program officer is at the proper entity all get aligned correctly. And folks aren't having to go through a number of processes a number of times. All right, let's go to case model number 3. This is our community bike hub. They're a downtown gear shop and a repair hub located in Kennebec County. Requesting $42K. The funding would establish new inventory and staff, provide, sorry, I'm having a hard time reading my own writing. Democratize transportation access through a gear share model bicycle resource. So think about your check-in, check-out bikes in the big cities so people can move around freely. They've shown an established impact due to COVID. And we've seen a full and complete application from that. Are they awardable? Yeah, it was great. It was a great project. Great community impact, great resource building, and it's sustainable. So we love this. Great. So if you, now that everybody's a pro in this application process and understands it completely, the next steps for anybody interested is to go onto our website or use the QR code that's available in a few slides and on our documents here. If you're interested in technical assistance or entrepreneurial training, that's another aspect of this program Sabrina talked about, fill out our intake form. If you are interested in submitting a grant and you haven't yet filled out the intake form, fill it out and then take a look. So you're in our system and we know how to best contact you. And then take a look at the grant guidance, familiarize yourself with all the rules and remember everything you just talked about. Then go ahead and go through the application and get a good submit in. These are the other partner hubs across the state. We are one of 7 that are currently active. Every hub is covering a different geographic region. So these are the folks that we would be referring out to and hopefully getting referrals from to get this funding out the door and help our businesses and entrepreneurs. Questions? If you scan this, it brings you directly to all of the application documents, the guidance documents, and all the info that you need. Anybody, any questions? Susan?
Talk about funding employees.
Funding employees. Funding can absolutely be used to pursue new employees, new hires, and also as a retention strategy.
And what would you do in the budget document? Do you guys like wages?
You can put in wages, you can put in hiring strategy, whatever. The more info we have, the better. If you want to break it out for salary and fringe and go into that much detail, we're happy to see it, but we wouldn't.
So you could use it to stay existing employees.
Yep.
Or hire new employees.
Correct.
50% of the commission is including contractors, is it only with their?
I believe it is 50% of a full-time staff that work for the organization. I can get clarification on that.
And is it headcount or compensation?
I don't know. I will. Yeah, I'll double check that.
Typically, you can kind of split the pie and whatever ways, but
Yeah. We want these funds to flow, so we want this to be as easy a program to work for as we can.
Another question.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't really question. Susan, what's your business? Is it possible that someone can request, say, $40,000, but actually support $30,000?
If there is a reason that we think your project isn't financially feasible at the current budget, and that could be that it's not enough funding or it's too much funding for it, and we don't think there's an alignment there, we would be following up, have a conversation, present, what we think is the correct amount of funding. We want to work with folks, make sure it's a sustainable project that is going to score high and succeed and not need to come back to more funding. Garvin.
Dave, say I was either a business that meets the general criteria and I was looking to come into a new downtown district or area. This is funding for a lease cost. Number 1, or number 2, say if I was a property owner or a landlord, and I'm working very diligently to secure set lease, could we pass on this program as an opportunity to help kind of bring that business in, recently the grant paid?
Yes, absolutely. We want as many people marketing and talking about this program as possible. Whether you're a business, whether you're a developer that's trying to attract businesses, please pass that lead flow our way, and we will make sure we work with folks who are eligible to get them the funding they need to be successful.
So if I understand you, that means expansion is possible.
Expansion is
You're
possible.
based in one county, but you want to expand in another county?
Yep, so that's a great question. Thank you, Susan. If you are a business that has 50% or more of your employees in Maine, you meet all those other criteria, but you're not currently located in our performance area or geography, but you would be using funding to establish in that new location, these funds are available to you. If you're in, let's say you're in Millinocket, you want to open up a new location in West Gardner, these funds can help you do that. Yeah.
What about if it was that like relocation?
So like completely relocating.
Right, so like I my son owns a business and
move from Skowhegan down to here to Waterville.
Okay.
It just started.
Yeah, so what if the funds are being used to come into this region, whether it's, if you're out of the region and looking to move into it, whether it's a relocation or an expansion, that's an allowable use of funds. If you'd be requesting funds and you're in the region and you're requesting funds to move out of our region, we wouldn't provide that funding, but we pass you, refer you to one of those other agencies that would align with that geography. Yeah.
How much funding is available throughout the whole state?
There is, in our region, there's about $700,000 of funding that we'll be deploying. For every region got a different amount. It was based on the size of the geography and the market. I don't know exactly how much the whole state has, but we can get that figure for you. Sabrina,
Are nonprofits eligible for this funding?
are nonprofits eligible? I believe nonprofits are eligible, but I will make sure that we clarify that and put that in our program guidance. Any other questions?
Maybe just a process question. So inherently, these grants will be scored on a case by case competitive basis, where we can't project every single scenario. What is the process where it seems like there's a good fit, but we don't really know? How would we collaboratively kind of problem solve eligibility and providing guidance to business?
So yeah, because of the nature of this program, that it's new in every part of the state that's performing it, and it's a rolling application that we're going to be seeing all different types of scopes and scales of projects in different industries constantly. And we may not have the best perspective. If we feel that we're not able to completely justify the award or we're questioning it, we will be sure to partner with or collaborate with our partners at the state of Maine at DECD. They've been fantastic to work with as we standing this program up. They've answered every question or concern we've had, and we'll be working with them to clarify any sort of blurry areas, whether it has to do with the eligibility or the use of funding.
What's the timeline in terms of from the time you apply to the time you kind of been awarded funding? What's that typical?
We tell people to budget about 30 to 60 days from application submittal to receiving a decision. We want to be working through these pretty quickly.
You talked about the January 1st, 2020 date. Is that the date registered to business in Maine or general incorporation of the company?
So the way that we have been articulated from the state of Maine, as well as how we are judging that criteria, is the January 1, 2020 is the date that you started engaging in business activity. So that's the way that we've been structuring it. There's going to be those cases that are kind of right on the line that we want to make sure we're being as easy to work with as we can. So if there's an argument to be made that there was no real business activity occurring before that date, then we would want to show favorably on that applicant. Any other questions from online or?
Just have a follow-up. Would project that the request about total grant outlay across the state. So the portfolio statewide is coming in at approximately $6 million.
So $6 million statewide for funding for this program.
And I say tentatively because every hub has its own discretion to some degree on the design of the program and what it takes to manage that program related to direct and indirect costs, labor costs, etc. But that would be the macro level, the proportion of funding available from the federal government to the state of Maine, generally speaking.
And so double clicking on that for a moment, Garber brought up something important. I want to make sure I'm making clear. This is our program. This is how we have chosen to distribute the funding that we are awarded. This is not necessarily going to be the case in Southern Maine and Northern Maine and Mid-Coast. Their program may look very similar, may look very differently to this. That's why we ask everybody that's coming into the program to fill out our intake form, so we can get that information. And if we realize that somebody is in a different geography or going to be using funds in a different area, we make sure we make that referral as early as possible, so folks aren't wasting time and energy filling out applications that they don't need to fill out with us. All right, and with that, hand it over to Sabrina, take us through our program guidance, some other fun documents. Do you need this?
No, I think I'm
Okay.
okay. Just maybe get out of the presentation. Right.
The screen is pulling this out, can you distinguish about whether this is a reimbursement, grant program or direct cash?
Yes, thank you. This is a direct cash deployment program, and it is also not requiring any match.
But can be used in that, is that correct?
Can be used as match for some programs, yes.
There we go. Okay, now Julie can see it. So let's switch spots. So you can control the mouse.
Sure, I'd love to.
Gotta make sure I'm standing on it. So this is our beautiful website. Pretty straightforward in terms of what it's covering. Gave it a really good job of outlining, where to find everything. And this is our resource hub for the recovery hub. And so when you scroll down the website, you'll notice there's, some imagery. The two buttons right at the top, that's pretty much your gateway into the entire program. You're going to click on the intake form, which will take you to a very simple one-page form, anywhere from maybe 5 to 10 minutes to complete it, where you can identify specifically what your needs are at this point in time, or even if you're identifying something that you can see happen as you, come into the region. With the grant application, like Gabe said, and as I will also reiterate, we highly recommend and also require that if you are interested in applying for grant funds, you need to fill out that intake form so that we can coordinate a meeting with you to make sure that you understand what the requirements are to apply for the funding. Then, of course, if you scroll down a little bit more, all the way down to the resources page, you'll notice that there's a box with a ton of links in here. So the nice thing about this is there's an overview memo, so you can get a general idea of why this exists, why the state of Maine authorized the funding in the first place, where the funding comes from through the American Rescue Plan. You can take a look at the intake form, just even if you want to scan through it and see what's available for you. The grant application, the budget form, the guidance document, and the actual application itself are all within that same tranche. And in addition to grant application FAQs. So specific questions that have been repetitive that we've noticed that have come in so that we can see them as well. And at the very bottom, we have an overview of general CMGC services. So say if you're a business that's already in Fairfield, Oakland, Waterville, or Winslow that may not be eligible for services through the ERIH, we can still provide general economic development assistance and technical assistance to you and to your business. And then of course, our friends at Deerfield Labs, they're the best friends. So now we'll go through the grant guidance document, which lives on the website. It's a very fun Word document. It's very long, but I promise you it gets better as it goes. So you'll see the table of contents, which provides everything that we've described in this presentation, but definitely more in depth. So this is where it takes you through the actual funding and administration, takes you through a timeline of how things are supposed to be coordinated and how they work. The selection criteria gets more in terms of the scoring, so how everything lines up according to which funding tranche that you are looking at. Even though they will be scored all on the same basis, each grant has its own criteria in terms of what you need to meet. And then there's the application forms towards the bottom, and also understanding where your geographic performance area is and whether it falls into Kennebec or Somerset County. So that's the general program guidance. Any questions about the website or the program guidance that you've seen so far?
Just this section highlights our funding tranches and provides a little more detail onto the intention behind breaking them into those 4 categories.
Can you describe what a viral assessment is?
Gabe, can you do that?
Viral assessment is a method for evaluating the level of innovation and that a particular project has. It is a well-used and liked methodology that we're borrowing from state of Maine programs. Maine Technology Institute uses this assessment tool to qualify their grantees, and that's why we're using it for this arm of our grant funding.
Yeah.
And if somebody needs help with that, you know, if they have questions on that, what would you recommend they do?
If they have questions on that, we would recommend they reach out to us and we will work with them on it. If there's any questions we can't figure out, we'll connect them with the folks that are better served to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in terms of, I think there's an important distinction too between these two grants as well. And you'll notice that each category, do you mind scrolling up just a little bit? So with each of the 4 tranches, you'll know that they have a specific funding cap. But if you look at the innovation grants and the special projects grants, you'll notice that there's a range. So depending on if you have questions about whether or not your project falls into a specific category, we can help you with that as well in terms of guiding you in the direction of, you know, not saying that you shouldn't apply for a specific grant, but we'll help you identify which is, you know, the better need based off of your priorities for what you'd like to fund in the short term or in the long term. And then going through, there is no matching requirement for this grant, which is great. So it does cover up to 100% of the project costs. And oh, that's a good point there. So number 3, so each applicant can only be awarded a grant in one category, but if you are awarded a small business growth grant, which is the grant that's up to $5,000, you still are eligible for the other grants as well. But if you are awarded in one of the other categories, you will not be eligible for any additional funding. Just to clarify. I think I'm trying to think if there's something else. Really, eligibility. So these are the documents to demonstrate your COVID-19 impact, showcasing that you have the presence in Maine, 50% or more employees, your business exists in or plans to relocate to the economic summary area, which is Kennebec or Somerset County. You have demonstrated COVID impact, which can be demonstrated through your financial documents, which are all in the guidelines. And then also, as Gabe iterated, your business does need to be registered with the Maine Secretary of State that you were established in the state of Maine. And then eligible funding uses, which we've already gone through and talked about, and then the application process and required materials. So this is as you're putting your application together. This is just condensing everything into a really easy to read format where you can just check off as you go. In the grant application, I will say at the end of the grant is, where you can upload all of these documents. So it's outlined exactly like this. We have separate categories for each. So you upload the budget form in one section, you upload the completed W-9 into a section. You can upload all of your supporting documents in another section, try to make it as easy as we could. So, and then submittal or transmission, you'll submit it right through the SurveyMonkey. We will be notified. And then from there, our application review committee will look at all of the documentation that we have from all applicants, and you will be notified within 30 to 60 days whether or not we award. Like I said, okay.
I'm gonna go over to the actual application.
Yeah, let's do that one.
Where's my mouse?
Right, yeah, right there. It's a funny one.
Oh,
I know. I'm gonna go to hot corners.
Can't see it.
Go back up to the top. There you go.
I cannot see it.
There you go. A little bit. There you go.
There it is.
Boom. So on this won't show the entire application, but this is just to give an idea. When you're in the application portal, do you want to zoom in a little bit? There we go. So it gives the general idea of what the grants are. It gives all funding tranches as well in terms of why we have this funding and why you're applying for it as well. There are also links that will direct you to the guidance document. If you need it at any point, you can go back to it in there. If you need more information, you can go to our homepage as well. And then for assistance, you can email anyone on the team that specifically gave. And so just going through the document, it's very straightforward in terms of you identify who you are. If you are applying on behalf of the company, but you are not the founder, there is a specific section where you can outline that as well. So, and see the information below if you're different from the above. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward from there. Of course, if you would feel more comfortable having a paper application, we can send that to you in advance. So that way, if you have any questions about the grant itself, or if you'd like to fill it out first, before you get to this, we're more than happy to accommodate that. In addition to the budget form, the guidelines, the intake form, whatever we can do to make it easiest. Yeah.
Just in terms of comparison, this say a business that fits the criteria, but I have not done many grants before. COVID though, I applied for some federal assistance. Was successful, so I have my materials are kind of organized, good to go, but I get a little nervous jumping into a grant, right? How would you evaluate how streamlined this is? How nervous could I be? How would this compare to maybe other grants? What was kind of an approach and goal in putting this grant process together?
Yeah, I think in terms of this application, looking at the different funding tranches and the availability of the funding, the goal was to make it as seamless as possible for those that haven't necessarily accessed specific funding opportunities. You know, if you're a smaller business or you're a smaller entity, you may not be the type of business that wants to put up a 20% match or has the capacity to put that type of match. So within this program, what we recommend to all businesses is to evaluate your COVID-19 impact first. Put your financial documentation together to understand how you can best outline that summary within the narrative of your grant application. And then from there, if there are any specific questions that we can answer, or if we can assist in identifying, you know, what makes the most sense to include in a package, if it makes sense, if you're scaling or if you're building a business, does it make sense to include some of those schematics? Does it make sense to show an overall project plan? So from there, we can kind of walk you through. We won't write the application for you, but we can show you how to put it together in the most comprehensive way. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Sounds streamlined.
Okay.
On your innovation grants, referring to the viral assessment, is it your expectation that the applicant will do their self-assessment for viral, or will you assess them on the viral scale?
I think the viral assessment is mostly based off of the methodology that the state entity uses in terms of how to gauge whether or not it's within a specific industry cluster.
The intention behind the inclusion of the viral assessment references is we want to ensure that we're putting every program into every application to its best and highest source of funding. So if an entity is not really hitting those kind of typical standards of an innovative or tech-based organization, we would definitely want to steer them more to the special projects grant. It's not to say that application is going to be, you know, thrown out. It's that we're going to just use that methodology to make sure that applications that fit that criteria are getting aligned with the right pool of funding.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So this just shows the first page, but of course it's blocked by text. But we do have a Word document that showcases all of the questions in the application that we're happy to forward and that they would like to review them. But yes, any outstanding questions, inquiries, queries, comments, concerns, expectations?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
But yes, spring is
Swing the camera back over. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This conversation has been recorded and will be available for later viewing on our YouTube channel. I'd like to thank our sponsors for this evening's conversation. This free presentation is sponsored by CGI, Valley Beverage, Bricks Co-working and Innovation Space, and Thomas College's Harold Alpont Institute for Business Innovation. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.